Well, here we are. We're at DevLearn in San Jose, and we're talking with my friend Ellen Wagner, who has just completed far-reaching research on where we're going. So, Ellen, tell people here in Berlin a little bit about what the future looks like.
Well, Jay, I'm delighted to talk with you today. The picture of the future for e-learning and where we're headed is filled with more possibilities than I could have ever possibly imagined even just 5 years ago. And yet, as I look at where we are headed, making sure that we're smart about focusing on the practice of our business and not being really seduced by so many things that are really incidental to what our true practice is going to be dealing with. I love emerging technologies. I'm not particularly good at some of them, but I'm certainly willing to throw myself into the practice and give it a shot. But what I have also found is that for me as a practitioner, playing with the toys to see what they're like, it's a very, very different proposition than being responsible for an enterprise learning operation that's trying to figure out how to maintain the very best service for the learners that they need to support. Can we turn all of our attentions to the social media? Well, of course, there are lots of wonderful things that it does. On the other hand, it doesn't do everything, nor should it. And the idea of being smart about where we put our energy in the future is probably more important now for learning professionals than it's ever been.
Now, the social media is such a buzz right now that I have a question, and I really want to know the answer to this one, is how we can inject decent learning principles into the sort of chaos that usually accompanies bottom-up social media. I mean, what do you do?
Well, the joy of social media, Jay, is that people do like to be social, and most of our social engagements have typically been pretty chaotic. So if you think about what we're doing as, say, I would say a cocktail party, but of course if we're worrying about being in the workplace, that perhaps might not be the best analogy. But looking at the type of exchange, conversation and engagement with different people is, it's messy. It is messy. So the thing we've got to remember is that if we're truly talking about being social, constraining social engagement and interaction is counter to what this isn't allowing us to do. Now, having said that, figuring out times to select when the cacophony of conversation is important and times when there's a different type of model required for the learning. I think that's really the question for us. Because the social media themselves, they're going to be just as chaotic as they could possibly be.
Yep.
I mean,
yep.
And I think that embracing the fact that it's chaotic and thinking about that as a feature, not a bug, maybe that's the best way to think about it.
Now, since you've just gone through research from eLearning Guild and Gartner and IDC and Josh Burson and Brandon Hall and a whole bunch of other people, were there any big surprises?
The surprise that I continually have is that as smart as we are and as smart as so many of these researchers are at finding where we're going to be going, I'm surprised at how little information we find on how to get there. It's not even that I'm looking at effective practices, because that presumes that one has arrived. So for me, what surprises me is that looking ahead a year from now and getting the metrics to define that is a wonderful thing, and good researchers need to be congratulated for the fact that they are measuring some really fairly arcane parts of our industries. At the same time, that's not necessarily the point for a lot of us. So for me, I think the biggest surprise is that as smart as we are and as much as we're doing, crossing the chasm continues to be a really, really big challenge for us.
Well, it'd be fun doing that with you in Berlin.
Well, let's take a look at it. I'm looking forward to being there and seeing you there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Wiedersehen.